My brother took credit for my work. "You wouldn't have done it without me. You owe me everything," he said, laughing proudly. I quietly signed a better deal, and the next day, my brother threw his arm around my shoulders like we were best friends, laughing loud enough for the whole room to hear. "You wouldn't have done it without me, man. You owe me everything," he said, half shouting, half gloating, like it was the punchline to some private joke. I smiled, or something close enough to a smile to get by, and nodded along, pretending I didn't feel the sting of every word. Because inside, it felt like something small and important inside me had cracked, maybe for good this time. If you'd seen us from the outside, you'd probably think we were close. Two brothers, celebrating the biggest moment of our lives. That's how Evan wanted it to look, anyway. Always had. Me? I was getting really good at swallowing things down, and keeping my hands steady when all I wanted to do was walk away. The truth was, I had spent the last 3 years, building this project. Quietly. Patiently. Pouring myself into every late night, every setback, every tiny, lonely victory no one saw. It had become the heartbeat of my life. And now, when the first real light of recognition finally cracked through the clouds, Evan swooped in like he had built it brick by brick himself. The signs had been there, I guess. Evan was always like that, the golden child, the one who could charm a room with a grin, the one mom and dad always bragged about at holiday dinners. And me? I was the quiet one. The one who was good with computers, but could stand to be a little more social, if you asked them. But I'd been blind this time. Stupid, maybe. I thought if I just kept my head down, if I just worked hard enough, something good would finally be mine. Just mine. I guess I forgot who I was dealing with. The first real trouble started with a stray email. A simple, stupid mistake that cracked the surface wide open, and once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. It happened late one night, while I was sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by empty coffee cups and half-scribbled notes. I was going through my inbox, trying to catch up on the mountain of messages that had piled up since the project had started gaining attention. That's when I saw it, a forwarded email chain. From Evan. At first, I thought it was a mistake. He wasn't exactly known for his attention to detail. But the subject line made my stomach twist. Our project, partnership discussion. Our project? I clicked it open, heart already pounding faster than I liked. There it was, plain as day. Evan had been meeting with potential investors. Alone. Talking about my work like it was something we had built together. A collaborative vision, born from late-night brainstorming sessions between brothers. I scrolled further, and it got worse. There were promises he had made. Claims about his lead role in the development, how he had guided the concept, how none of this would have existed without his strategic vision. I felt the blood drain from my face. Strategic vision. Evan wouldn't know an algorithm from a hole in the ground. Half the time, he barely understood what I was trying to explain. But he had the gift of words, of making people believe him. And here he was, planting himself at the center of everything I had built, already carving out a throne. I sat there for a long time, just staring at the screen, the walls around me closing in, the air feeling heavier by the second. Part of me wanted to drive straight to his house, hammer on the door, and demand an explanation. But another part, the part that had been trampled by him too many times before, told me to stop. To think. To be smarter this time. I closed my laptop quietly, my hands trembling, and leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't going to fight him on his turf. Not this time. If he wanted a war, I'd give him one. But it would be on my terms. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the cracked line where the ceiling met the wall, feeling every heartbeat like a ticking clock inside my chest. The anger came first, a hot, pounding wave that made me want to throw something, break something, anything to match the way my trust had shattered. But underneath the anger was something colder, sharper, A kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't the first time Evan had taken something from me. Not even close. It was just the first time it had mattered enough for the world to notice. Growing up, it had been little things, my ideas, my achievements, my victories, always somehow ending up attached to his name. I'd bring home a science fair trophy. Evan would tell everyone how he helped me with the concept. I'd land a big internship. Evan would laugh and say, "We brainstormed that plan together." And every time, my parents would beam at him like he was the sun, and I would smile tightly and let it go. Because back then, it didn't seem to matter. It was just family, right? Just brothers. But this time was different. This time, there were contracts involved. Partnerships. Future deals that could shape the rest of my life. And Evan thought he could ride my work to the top and leave me holding the ladder. The more I thought about it, the more one thing became terrifyingly clear. If I didn't act now, I was going to lose everything. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew I had to be careful. Calculated. Quiet. I had spent years learning how to build something brick by brick in silence. Now I was going to dismantle Evan's lies the same way. Piece by piece. Until there was nothing left. The next morning, I woke up with a plan already forming, sharp and certain. No confrontations. No angry shouting matches that Evan could twist into some story about his ungrateful little brother. No, this had to be surgical. Clean. I started by pulling every file I had. Every early draft. Every email chain. Every note scribbled on the back of a napkin when the idea was still just a wild spark in my head. I organized everything into folders, digital and physical, labeling dates, timestamps, witnesses. I even found old text messages between me and my mentor, Dr. Stanton, where I had excitedly shared the first sketches of the project, long before Evan ever showed an ounce of interest. Then I reached out to a few trusted people who had been there during the long nights, who had seen me building this thing from the ground up. Friends. A former professor. Even one or two colleagues who had no reason to lie for me. They agreed to sign statements, no questions asked. I didn't even have to explain much. They already knew who had done the real work. Meanwhile, Evan kept parading around like a king, posting vague, boastful updates on LinkedIn, dropping casual, our, and we, into conversations with people who didn't know better. I stayed silent, smiling when I had to, nodding at the right moments. Because the thing about Evan was, he only knew how to win when it was loud. He didn't understand the power of a quiet strategy. By the end of the week, I had built a wall of proof so solid that even Evan's silver tongue couldn't slip around it. And just when I was ready, just when the timing was perfect, I made my move. I signed a private deal, the kind of deal people dream about, with a company that wanted full ownership rights to the project. And they wanted me. Only me. The ink on the papers wasn't even dry when I got the call to meet the family the next day. A celebration, Evan said. Our success, he called it proudly. I smiled as I hung up the phone. Perfect. Let him set the stage. I would just make sure the whole world saw what was real when the curtain fell. The day of the gathering, the weather was almost laughably perfect. Bright sun, clear skies, the kind of afternoon that practically begged for good memories. A part of me wondered if Evan had paid the sky off, too. This celebration was being hosted at my parents' house, big, pristine, full of polished wood floors and family photos that told carefully edited stories. They had set up tables in the backyard, draped with white cloths, topped with flowers and cheap champagne flutes. Balloons bobbed lazily in the breeze. When I pulled up, the driveway was already packed. Family, friends, distant cousins who probably couldn't spell my name if they tried, all here to bask in the reflected glow of Evan's achievement. I sat in my car for a long minute, gripping the steering wheel, steadying myself. This was it. No second chances once this door opened. Finally, I got out and made my way to the backyard, weaving through clusters of chatter and laughter. Everyone was dressed like it was a wedding or something. Dresses, pressed shirts, the whole 9 yards. And there he was. Evan. Standing at the center like a sun, everyone orbiting around him. He spotted me immediately, grinning that same lopsided, cocky grin he wore the day he stole my baseball glove and said it was better in his hands. Old habits, I guess. Hey, there he is! Evan boomed, throwing an arm around me like we were best friends again. His cologne hit me like a wall, something expensive and heavy, trying too hard. I played along. I had to. For now. He pulled me toward a small stage they had set up, a microphone, a sad little speaker system, a "Congratulations" banner sagging in the middle. Somewhere near the food table, my mother was dabbing her eyes with a tissue, her other hand proudly clutching my father's arm. It was all so perfect. So fake. Evan tapped the mic. The speaker squealed. He laughed, playing it off, flashing his perfect teeth. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice smooth, practiced. "This project has been a labor of love, a vision my brother and I have nurtured from the ground up. We couldn't have done it without each other." The crowd clapped. Someone whistled. My stomach twisted. "And today," Evan continued, puffing out his chest a little, "we're proud to share that we're moving forward with major partnerships, new funding, and big dreams for the future." There it was. The lie polished and shining. He turned and clapped me on the back, hard enough to make me stumble forward a step. I caught myself, fixed a smile on my face, and reached into my pocket. Time to end this. I pulled out a stack of printed documents, neat, clipped together, and laid them gently on the table next to the microphone. The chatter started dying down immediately. "Actually," I said, my voice steadied but loud enough for the entire backyard to hear, "I just wanted to clarify a few things." Evan's smile faltered, just a flicker, and I watched it. Savored it. "This project," I continued, flipping through the stack, "was developed solely by me. Every document, every draft, every design, created long before anyone else got involved." I turned the first page to face the crowd, the official, notarized agreement with the company. My name. My signature. No Evan anywhere. A few people gasped. Someone muttered, "Wait, what?" "And just yesterday," I said casually, like we were discussing the weather, "I signed an exclusive deal confirming that fact. Legally. Officially." Dead silence now. Even the breeze seemed to stop. I looked at Evan then. Really looked at him. The confusion. The dawning horror. The desperate little wheels starting to spin behind his eyes. He opened his mouth, probably to lie, to smooth it over like he always did, but I beat him to it. "And for anyone wondering," I said, flipping to another page, emails, witnesses, dates. "I have documentation proving Evan had no involvement in the creation of this project." I paused. Let it settle. Let it hurt. "So," I finished, stepping away from the mic, "I'm grateful for everyone's support. And moving forward, this is mine. Only mine." I didn't wait for Evan to recover. I didn't wait for my parents' confused stares, or the murmured shock spreading through the crowd. I just walked off the stage. Past Evan's frozen face. Past my parents. Past everyone. Out the backyard. Out of their reach. And for the first time in my life, really, truly the first time, I felt free. I didn't make it halfway down the driveway before I heard my name. "Jason! Jason, wait!" Evan's voice, cracked and desperate now, no laughter, no smugness left. I didn't stop. I kept walking, slow and steady, the way you do when you know the ground behind you is crumbling, and you have no reason to look back. I heard footsteps pounding the pavement, fast and uneven, then a hand grabbed my arm. I turned slowly, and looked him dead in the eyes. For the first time in my life, Evan looked small. Not just smaller than me, smaller than the version of him he had spent so many years building. The charmer. The golden boy. The invincible one. All gone. "Jason, come on, man," he said, breathless, his hand still gripping my sleeve like a lifeline. "You didn't have to do it like this." I raised an eyebrow. Calm. Controlled. "I didn't have to do it like this." "You mean, tell the truth?" He flinched, just slightly. "You're making me look bad," he hissed, glancing nervously toward the backyard, where voices were rising, confused, angry. I leaned in, my voice low enough that only he could hear. "You did that all by yourself." He opened his mouth again, to argue, to beg, who knows, but I pulled my arm free before he could speak. "No more speeches, Evan," I said. "No more fake partnerships. No more stealing." He looked stunned, like a kid caught stealing from the cookie jar but unable to process the consequences. "You can explain it however you want," I added, stepping back. "But I'm done. You don't get another piece of me. Ever." I turned away for the last time. I half expected him to follow me again, to make a scene, to drag me into one last ugly fight. But he didn't. Maybe he finally realized he had nothing left to bargain with. No tricks. No lies. No audience willing to clap for him anymore. When I reached my car, I allowed myself one last look over my shoulder. Evan was still standing there, halfway down the driveway, frozen, hands at his sides, shoulders sagging, watching me leave. It was the first time I'd ever seen him truly alone. I slid into the driver's seat, shut the door quietly, and drove away. No tires screeching. No angry music blaring from the speakers. Just the soft hum of the engine and the clean, startling feeling of breathing without weight on my chest. The calls started before I even made it out of the neighborhood. First my mother. Then my father. Then Evan. Again and again, my phone lit up, buzzing against the passenger seat like a wasp trapped under a glass. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry. That fire had burned out hours ago. But because there was simply nothing left to say. I pulled onto the highway, letting the wind pour through the open window, carrying the noise away. In the rearview mirror, the town grew smaller, the trees blending into a single green blur. It almost felt like erasing them. When I finally stopped for gas 2 towns over, I checked my phone, more out of curiosity than anything else. 17 missed calls. 9 new voicemails. I played one on speaker as I filled the tank, half listening. "Jason, you're overreacting." My mother's voice crackled, strained and brittle. "Your brother made a mistake. We're family. We don't tear each other down over misunderstandings." I laughed under my breath, a low, humorless sound. A misunderstanding. That's what they were calling it now. I didn't bother listening to the rest. Back on the road, my mind kept drifting back to the backyard, to the stunned faces, the uncomfortable silences. To Evan, standing there with nothing to hide behind. I wondered how long it would take for the story to spread. How long before the cousins stopped answering his calls. Before the investors pulled out. Before the world he built on borrowed credit collapsed under its own weight. But the truth was, it didn't matter to me anymore. Not really. For the first time, his downfall wasn't my burden to carry. I wasn't the one who had to pick up the pieces or apologize for him. I wasn't the one who had to explain why he lied, why he took things that weren't his, why he thought the world owed him something just because he smiled the right way. That was his mess now. His alone. As for me, I had a new contract. New partners who knew exactly who they were working with. A future that belonged to me and no one else. It was strange, and a little sad, in a way, how quickly freedom started to feel normal. Like shrugging off a heavy coat you forgot you were wearing. I didn't know exactly where I was heading yet. But for once, the road was open. And it was mine. 3 days passed. 3 days of silence, then chaos, then silence again. It was like watching a storm from a distance, Dark clouds gathering, flashing across the horizon, but never touching me. On the morning of the third day, there was a knock at my door. At first, I thought about ignoring it. Maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe it was nobody. But something told me I already knew. I opened the door slowly, and there he was. Evan. He looked nothing like the man who had laughed on stage just days ago. The sharp, cocky lines of his face were sagging now. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair was messy, like he hadn't slept much, or at all. "Jason," he said, almost in a whisper. No swagger. No fake smile. Just a broken man trying to put something back together with empty hands. I didn't invite him in. I just stood there, the door open halfway between us. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, like a kid who knew he was in trouble but didn't know how to say he was sorry. "I screwed up," he said finally. His voice cracked. "I got ahead of myself. I thought if I could help get it noticed." "You didn't help," I said quietly. "You stole." He flinched at the word. "Good. It needed to hurt. I never wanted to cut you out," he said, fast, desperate. "I just thought, if we got in bigger rooms, if people saw us." "Us?" I cut him off. "There was no us, Evan. There never was." He opened his mouth, closed it. His hands balled into fists at his sides, then loosened again. Deflated. Empty. "I miss my brother," he said after a long silence, voice rough. "I miss when it was simple." I studied him carefully. And for the first time in years I saw it, not the version of Evan I had grown up with, but the real one. The one who was terrified of being ordinary. The one who would rather lie, steal, and trample anyone to stay golden. He didn't miss me. He missed the safety I gave him. The cover. The reflection of a light he never earned. And that realization settled something in me that had been restless for far too long. I shook my head slowly. "You didn't lose your brother," I said, voice calm, almost kind. "You threw him away. A long time ago." He looked like he wanted to argue, to reach out, to say something that could rewind the clock. But there was nothing left to say. I closed the door gently in his face. No slam. No final shout. Just a quiet, irreversible end. I stood there for a long moment afterward, my hand resting lightly against the wood, feeling the last echoes of him fade away. It wasn't rage that filled me. It wasn't sadness either. It was peace. Simple. Clean. The past was behind me now. And the future? It was finally, completely mine. The house felt different after Evan left. It was quieter, but not the lonely kind of quiet I used to fear. It was the kind of quiet that lets you breathe, lets you think without noise pressing down on you. I sat by the window that evening, watching the last of the sun disappear behind the trees, and let myself feel it all, the betrayal, the sadness, the relief. Especially the relief. I realized something as I sat there. The real victory wasn't proving Evan wrong. It wasn't signing the deal, or exposing the lies. It was that, for the first time, I had chosen myself. Not family loyalty. Not keeping the peace. Not being the good brother who swallowed his pride for the sake of appearances. Me. I chose me. And it didn't feel selfish. It felt right. Some losses, I realized, are actually the first steps toward freedom.